let's have some fun. Sweep unplugged starts now.
Hey guys, welcome to another Sweep Unplugged. Rudy Campos Jr. here for Sweep the League. Be sure to go to our YouTube, and all you got to do is search Sweep the League TV, be a subscriber. There you can get all the content, Sweep Unplugged. We've got another sports card show coming out probably this week and next week. Of course, we got the big show of them all, Sweep the League TV, which comes to you every single night, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Central Time. So got a lot going on, STL Music, and a whole bunch of other things going on. We've got the launch of more podcasts as well. So again, today is Sweep Unplugged. We're going to be joined by a very special guest. And our guest today, Mr. Brian Hite, is going to break down something that not only in the sports world that we deal with as athletes, but it also is another focus on everyday life, because in 2025, as you guys have seen for Sweep Unplugged, we've been hidden, whether it be the fitness side, the financial side, or there was one side that we actually hit already in the 2025 was the business side. And on the business side, it was launching, the dreams that you had. You have an idea, making it a reality. So again, another great episode of Sweep Unplugged, because we're going to be hitting that personal side of you guys. And it deals with what the title says: stress, pressure, overcoming stuff like that. Because as athletes, we feel it a lot more, but also, where you're playing in a game and you've got that pressure situation, doesn't compare to everyday life. The pressures and the struggles and the stress of life seems to take a really, really big hit on a lot of us. So we're not going to waste any more time. Let's go ahead and bring on our guest here, Mr. Brian Hite. Brian, welcome to Sweep Unplugged. Appreciate you joining us today. I hope you are doing good.
Yeah, we're doing great out here. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. And, before we started, we were talking about where Brian is. And I remember, telling him like the culture change and how, I lived in Texas. We lived in Ohio a couple of years, and then we came back to Texas and just seeing different things. And it made me think, as soon as I hit record, I thought I got to ask him this question, because the biggest thing we want to talk about is stress and pressure and a lot that goes on. And before we dive deep into that, a simple shock going from one place to another, people may not realize that you may be excited for that first Florida trip, but in a way it does add a little bit of pressure and a little bit of stress, because it's the thought of the unknown, I guess. And that's kind of the way I felt going to Ohio. I had zero idea what to think about. Stress can happen just that fast, can it? I mean, just from the simplest things in life.
Yeah, stress. It's great that you differentiate the two, stress and pressure, because they are two different things. A lot of times people will conflate them. They'll talk about them like they're identical, but they're not, and they come from two different places. So I think probably a great place to start, if we're going to talk about stress and pressure, is just what are they? What are the definitions? What are they individually, and how are they distinct from each other? And the answer to that is starting with stress. This comes from a model called the transactional model of stress, put out years ago and backed up by a lot of research. But it essentially just says that there are two components to stress. One is that we perceive a situation as a threat. And then the second is that we believe that we have insufficient resources to deal with that threat. So we perceive a situation as being potentially harmful to us, and we don't think we have what it takes to deal with it effectively. That's where stress comes from. So you mentioned a move from one place to another, and you specifically mentioned the unknown. The human brain does not do well with unknown, with ambiguity. We just don't. And we perceive it as a threat. That's what happens when there's something we don't know, we're not sure, we're not certain. There's just a lot of ambiguity that gets interpreted by us as a threat, which is where some of that stress comes from. And then the question is, okay, I perceive it as a threat. Do I have the resources to handle it? Well, if I don't even know what it is because it's uncertain, well, then how do I know whether I have the resources to deal with it or not? So that's, again, it's those two things working together. That's where stress comes from. Now, pressure, on the other hand, that's different. Pressure is what we feel when the consequences are high, when the stakes are high. The consequences are very meaningful. and our attention is on that. So if I screw this up, then really bad things will happen. Or if I get this wrong, or if I don't do this right, then it's the consequences, not even the outcome itself. It's not failure itself or things not going exactly the way you want them to itself. That's not it. That's not where pressure comes from. Pressure comes from the consequences we believe will follow whatever that outcome is. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes we're accurate in our assessment of what that consequence might be and the bigness of it, meaning that if I fail, this is the bad thing that will happen. I'm right about that sometimes. And if this bad thing happens, it really is a bad thing. It's really a huge deal. So, for example, I still work as a stuntman.
Mhm.
Working on a show. It was just a few weeks ago. Actually, it's called The Cleaning Lady. They shoot it in Albuquerque, and we were out there. And I was doing a fight up on top of this sailboat that was on a trailer, and I got knocked off the sailboat, clipped this picnic table, landed on the picnic table, and bounced off to the ground. That was about 10 feet up in the air. I fell to a picnic table and bounced to the ground. So if I screw that up, then I could get injured very badly. And if I get injured very badly, then I'm going to look bad in front of the stunt coordinator. The stunt coordinator is going to look bad in front of the directors and producers. I'm not going to be able to work and make money to pay the bills. So these are the consequences. If this is where my attention is, then I experience a lot of pressure because I perceive those consequences to be very, very meaningful, very weighty. So that's the difference between stress and pressure. Stress comes from the situation itself and how we perceive it as a threat and whether or not we can deal with it. Whereas pressure comes from the consequences associated with whatever outcomes might be there. And the other thing interesting too about pressure, just while we're on it, is that it doesn't have to be bad consequences. It can be good consequences. If I get this right, then I'm going to get the promotion. And that's going to allow us to take the vacations and to pay all the bills and to whatever. The consequences can be good. That can also create pressure. Pressure doesn't necessarily have to come from being focused on what bad might happen. It also can come from what good might happen. Again, the key consequences. If my attention and my focus is on the consequences, pressure is very likely to be felt.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that you broke it down because a lot of people can mistake stress and pressure, and it's the same thing. Well, I'm stressing, but in reality, it could be just the pressure that you're faced with. So breaking it down like that really helps everybody out there to understand the difference between the two. We're talking to Brian Hite now. You go to brianhiteglobal.com. Got a whole lot of stuff there that you can get information on, some programs that we're going to get into, also books, podcasts, everything you need to know here about Mr. Hite. Go to brianhiteglobal.com. Talking to us here on Sweep the League Unplugged. You mentioned stuntman, and I'm going to save that for the end because that's always a cool thing, and we kind of like to go at the end here, a little off the tracks and stuff. So we'll definitely save the stuntman talk for a little bit. But going back to stress and pressure, we talk to athletes a lot here at Sweep the League. We talk to professional athletes currently. We talked to them in the past, and they all experienced that one moment in a game where, hey, I'm at the free throw line. If I make this, we win. If I don't, we lose. They're in those types of pressure situations. But in everyday life, you just mentioned the difference between stress and pressure. Out of the two, which is the one that a person experiences the most and just doesn't realize that they're experiencing it? Because in his situation with me, and I know a few other people, family wise and friends, it's the same talk every day. It's the stress, the stress, the stress, the stress, the stress. For me, I always try to just relax. And, my dad used to always tell me, you can only control what you can control. You can't worry about it because stress will kill you. And the thing is that you can breathe, you can go through motions, you can go through everything, but you can't overcome it. So in everyday life, like I'm talking about here, is we always go under, I'm stressed today, I'm stressed today, I'm stressed today, I'm stressed today. At what point does stress start to take control of your life? Because the whole key word, stress, is a killer. And that's something that I wanted to ask you about. At what point does one stressful thing just start to overcome you and cause emotional damage, cause, physical damage, stuff like that? Because I don't know what breaking point, I don't know at what point the breaking point is. And I know a lot of our listeners may think that, I'm going to stress every day, but at what point is enough to where, all right, now I'm getting really sick?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that there is a breaking point.
Mhm.
It's a cumulative effect that happens over time, and the extent to which it affects us varies based on other factors, meaning how much sleep are we getting? What kind of food are we eating? What kind of
Mhm.
exercise are we getting? What kind of friends do we have? And how often are we spending time with them? How often are we connecting with loved ones? There are a lot of different variables. This is one of the reasons the work that I do, I really focus on a holistic approach to whatever, meaning physical, mental, emotional, social, and sometimes spiritual, because these are all components of human beings. And when we move the needle on one, we're moving the needle on the other.
Mhm.
Meaning, if I change the way that I'm doing things physically, like I do start getting more sleep, I do start eating better, that changes the way that my mind works. I can think more clearly, I can process information more efficiently. It changes my emotional state. I'm not as volatile. I might be more patient and, with different situations.
Mhm.
It changes us socially in that I have more energy to interact with other people and to tolerate them better. I mean, because
Yeah.
again, with emotional volatility, sometimes that can affect our social interaction. So all of these different things are intertwined and interconnected in really meaningful ways. So that's why I say, if stress is happening, meaning that we're perceiving a situation as a threat and we're doubting our ability to handle that threat effectively, that does take, excuse me,
Sure.
that does take a toll on us physically through different chemicals like cortisol and its effect on our bodies. It takes a toll on us mentally because we get overwhelmed in our minds, and emotionally. Again, it affects all these different things. What the breaking point is, that's going to, I don't, number one, I don't know that there is a breaking point
Yeah.
necessarily. It will get continually worse on a scale of worseness, you know, um, rather than just falling off a cliff. But when and how much and how quickly that happens is absolutely a function of these other resources that we have available. This is work. When I was working with the Army, I worked for the Army. I wasn't in the Army. I worked for the Army as a contractor for 10 years. And I did a lot of training in resilience. And this is one of those things about resilience. If we're talking about resilience, that's when we bring in those resources to bear. The more resources we have available, the more resilient we tend to be.
Mhm.
So, but I do want to distinguish one thing, because you've said it twice now, and I want to just highlight it.
Yeah.
You
Go ahead.
said pressure situations, and to
Mhm.
me, I don't think such a thing even exists. I
Okay.
know that that's common in our vernacular, but to me, and this isn't new. This isn't Brian inventing something. This goes back 2,000 years to Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. The fact that it's not events that determine how we feel and what we do, it's how we interpret those events. It's how we think about those events. It's the meaning that we assign to those events, our perception, that determines what we're going to feel and what we're going to do. So the situation itself is not a pressure situation. In other words, going into a certain situation, there's no objective situation that you can pick to say, okay, if you're in this situation, you're going to feel pressure. It's just not true. And
Mhm.
it's objectively not true, in the sense that, I mean, just for me personally, I've been in two almost identical situations. Car driving down the road, I'm coming out the back of it, hitting the ground and rolling. One of them I felt pressure, the other I didn't. Or the two of us could be in the identical same situation. One of us could feel pressure, the other one doesn't. So it's not the situation that will determine whether we experience pressure or not. I think that that's a interesting and useful distinction to make. If we can stop calling things pressure situations,
Mhm.
that, because what that does is it normalizes this fact of, okay, when I get in this situation, I'm going to feel pressure. Well, you don't have to, and I don't think you should, because we don't perform our best when we feel pressure. And again, anybody who's been a performer ever in life, this is not a hard argument to make, because when we've been at our best, every single person will tell you when they've been at their best, they've been in whatever's called, they call it the flow or the zone, or I refer to it as my bubble, but whatever it is, there's no pressure, there's no stress, there's no outside world. There is nothing other than what is relevant to the task, what I'm doing in this moment. There's nothing else that exists, and it's all just flowing. There's no pressure, there's no stress. That's when we're at our best. So to say that by definition, a situation is going to make us feel pressure makes us expect to feel pressure. And if we are feeling pressure, then we're not at our best. So that's why I think that terminology, the words matter. And that's why in the work that I do, in the talks that I give and the workshops and all of the coaching, it's high stakes situations, high stakes environments, meaning that the stakes are high, that success or failure is going to matter. It could matter physically in the sense that if you screw this up, you might die. I've been in those situations, and many other people are every day too. It could be, if I screw this up, then I'm going to lose a bunch of money. It could be, if I get this right, then I'm going to have my ticket punched and my whole career is going to change for the better. Whatever it is, the stakes are high. That can be, there's still some perception involved of what I think high stakes are versus what you think high stakes are. But we can wrap our heads around high stakes a whole lot easier than high pressure. Pressure is very subjective. It is absolutely up to each person in terms of how they perceive things and what they are putting their attention on. Remember, I said pressure comes from attention being on the consequences. Well, if my attention's not on the consequences, but instead is on the task relevant things that I can do right now, the things like you just said. You said your dad told you, you can only control what you can control. Well, what can you control? Put your attention on that. Put your energies toward those things. Pressure goes away. It's eliminated. It's not there. If we are in the present moment, focused on task relevant things, there is no pressure. And that's where we perform to our potential.
Talking to Brian Hite, BrianHiteGlobal.com. Great programs on there, great website. Again, speaking, he has some books out there as well, podcasts as well. So definitely want to check out BrianHiteGlobal.com. Talking to us here on Sweep Unplugged, getting some massive information, because we have to, we have to deal with it every day. There's pressure, there's stress, there's everything every day. And Brian's the main guy to get you through it. That's why you're going to visit his website, BrianHiteGlobal.com. So one thing I wanted to get into real quick before we go into some stuntman talk here is on the website, which is, again, BrianHiteGlobal.com. You've got a tab there for programs. You've got 4 great programs that you offer, and it's called StressX, PressureX, PhaseX, and DriveX. If you want to get into each one of those real quick to give our audience an idea, I was reading through them, and I mean, they all go hand in hand. They all look like they are perfect programs for people to get into that need the help right here with you. Go ahead and get into them, because StressX, PressureX, PhaseX, DriveX, amazing programs by you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, I'll just start with PressureX because that's where we were. Essentially, PressureX it's a program where we walk through exactly what pressure is, how it shows up for you and for other people in whatever environment you might be. And this depends if I'm given a, if I'm working as a group, or it's a workshop, or if it's one-on-one coaching, we get into different levels of specificity in terms of the individuals. But the whole point of the program is understanding what pressure is, understanding where and why it shows up in your life, and providing some tools and resources for you to eliminate it, not minimize it, not learn to work with it, not learn to perform under it, to get rid of it so that you free yourself up to perform to your potential. And the same thing with stress. StressX, again, they're 2 different things. So what is stress? How is it showing up in your life? Why are you experiencing it? And what are some strategies that you can use to eliminate stress to the best of our ability so that you free yourself up to operate to your potential? The other 2, I'll go with the DriveX. Motivation is a big problem for a lot of people. And this is something that I started working on when I first started working with the Army, because one of the biggest problems these leaders would say that they have is, how do I motivate my people? How do I get them to just be driven and move forward because they understand it's the right thing to do and not because I'm poking them and prodding them? That's what this program's about. What is motivation? What determines levels of motivation? What are the different sources of motivation, and why should we care about what our source of motivation is? How do we help ensure that for ourselves and those we lead, that we create environments that foster the kind of motivation that we want, so that we can keep ourselves pushing toward the goals for as long as we need to in order to achieve them? And then lastly is PhaseX. And this just breaks down performance into 4 phases: before, right before, during, and after. And it's that right before piece that gets lost sometimes in discussion about performance. We talk about before, how do we prepare? During, what are we doing? And then after, how do we recover? How do we learn? We talk about that. But there's a part that's that right before. It's when performance is imminent. It's not happening yet, but it's about to happen. And we have to transition from our regular walking around state to our performance state, physically, mentally, emotionally, so that we can be at our best in that moment. And I think that gets missed a lot. So the 4-phase approach, PhaseX, really just breaks down any performance, literally any performance. You have a challenging conversation with a spouse coming up, this will help you. You're going to discipline kids, this will help you. It doesn't matter what the performance is. It will have a before, a right before, a during, and after. And the program, we break down the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the social in each of those phases, so that we can be very intentional and deliberate in terms of preparation beforehand. We can be equally deliberate and intentional about that transition. How are we going to move efficiently from our walking around state to our performance state? How do we keep our attention where it needs to be in the moment and the during place, and recover it when we get distracted, which is a normal human thing? And then how do we recover most effectively physically and also mentally, emotionally, while learning as best we can from what just happened, so that when take 2 occurs, whether that's immediately or it's a month or a year later, whenever it is, we've got the tools that we've learned from this particular thing to move forward. So the PhaseX really eliminates a lot of overwhelm that many people feel with big performance situations, because it allows you to structure the approach to preparation and execution.
Yeah, so you're going through all the phases again. It was DriveX, PressureX. You've also have a StressX, and then you've also got a PhaseX. And then what you just described at PhaseX, I'm glad you saved that for last, because that was the one where I was really reading it like, man, this is me right here, because I deal with, sports media. I deal with my everyday job. I deal with being a dad. I deal with a lot of different things. And the PhaseX part for me was like, okay, that's perfect, because again, you've got the 4 phases on your website, which is brianhiteglobal.com: planning, pre-task execution, and recovery. And it's like, that is so me, because even in the easiest things of life, for example, I'm coaching my daughter in basketball and trying to get her to understand, this is what we're working on. This is how you're going to execute it. And then this is the, the recovery, the after, basically. And it goes into something so simple just in that, which that's why PhaseX to me was like, man, I really, really love this part of the program, is because it's almost every movement in life for me. I'm the type of person, I like to plan something out, and I like to make sure that it's going to go a certain way. And then I also have that backup plan. If it doesn't go this way, this is where I want to go, or this is how it's going to happen. This is what's going to work out. So PhaseX hits me directly in the heart there. Talking to Brian Hite, brianhiteglobal.com. You can check out all these great programs, and they are amazing. They are definitely amazing. So we're going to definitely promote Brian on our shows this week for Sweep the League TV. Again, brianhiteglobal.com. Give everybody an opportunity to go check out the website and get in contact with him. Earlier, I did read, Stuntman, and earlier you mentioned Stuntman. So the cool part is that, at the end of the show, I want to talk to you a little bit and get off the tracks a little bit here with the Stuntman talk. Now, I didn't see a whole lot of filmography. I didn't see a whole lot of stuff, but I got to know what's your favorite part about being a stuntman? Because I can imagine you, like you said, car coming at you so fast you have to dive out of the way. I don't know if you've been, the type that's jumping off of cliffs or anything like that. Favorite part about being a stuntman?
Well, I've done all of that actually. And the favorite part, there are a couple. One is just the challenge. It's always a new thing. When I show up on set, even if it's the same thing, I don't know how many stair falls. I've done probably a dozen car hits. I've done hundreds of fight scenes, but they're all different because it's in a different place for a different reason, in different context with different people. And that's the part that's very cool. It's not just showing up at the same place every day doing the same stuff. It's always different. And the other part is really just the people themselves. I love being around stunt people. I love just the attitude, the acceptance of challenge, the leaning into the hard. That's what so many are. And it's one of the qualities that so many share. And it's just fun being in that, and the creativity. You get on a set and the director says, okay, well, here's what I want to see. And you think, all right, well, how are we going to do that without everybody dying? What are we going to do to set the conditions because we want to give him what he wants. But we also want to all go home in the same condition we showed up in. So how do we do that? That requires some creativity. So there are a lot of different aspects of it that I really do enjoy.
Nice. And, we talked a lot about, as you can tell behind me, I've got a lot of Superman, Batman, stuff like that. Cause we have nerd podcasts as well on Sweep the League Network. So we talk a lot of, nerd stuff, comic book stuff. And one question I know I will get asked about, hey, when you talk to Brian, did you have, it's going to be the fact of, did you ever, or have you ever worked on any superhero shows, superhero movies, whether it be Marvel? If we can't get into too much details, I totally understand. But yeah, they're going to ask me.
Well, my very first job as a stuntman was at the Batman stunt show at the Six Flags in New Jersey. Nice. And I forget what I was just a Joker's henchman back in that show. And then they changed it to Batman Forever. And I was Robin, Dick Grayson and Robin in that one. And then they changed it to Batman and Robin. And this was out in LA. So I did 2 seasons in New Jersey and then I went out to LA. So 10 years I was in a Batman stunt show at a Six Flags. That was my very first entry into stunts. I also did a touring show called Spider-Man. It was some kind of Spider-Man show. It was a theater show. It was for kids. We hit different theaters. Radio City Music Hall was one of them. That was really cool. But we went to different theaters and did that. I did that for it was about 8 months, I guess, 8-9 months. And I was just in the Superman movie that's coming out later this year. There was a fight scene we did on a beach. We shot it in the Cleveland area up by Lake Erie. And can't tell you what that's all about and the things, but there's a fight scene happening on a beach and I'm in it. So that's what I can tell you. So when Superman comes out, Superman Genesis, I think it's called, I did that one as well.
Nice. That's amazing right there, because now we're going to get everybody all hyped up in the background here for Sweep the League and the audience that we have at Sweep the League Nation. So, Brian, it's been fun because, like I said, the ability to overcome stress and pressure, you've given us great points. Your website, brianhiteglobal.com, provides all the material that we need, has the programs to get in contact with you. And we just got to let everybody know, no matter the stress, no matter the pressure, no matter what, everything can be overcome. And that's what we're going to leave everybody with here today, is that you can overcome anything. You just got to put your mind to it, and you got to, just be ready, be prepared, get ready to execute. As he said in the PhaseX part of the program, you can always be prepared for every situation. It's just getting mentally ready, getting mentally prepared for it. You got any more last parting words for Brian, for everybody at Super League Nation? The floor is all yours, sir.
I just want to highlight what you just said. I created these programs because I've been through all of these challenges. And if you're going through them too, if you're experiencing a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, performance, feeling overwhelmed in different situations, and you don't have somebody to walk you through exactly how to do these things, how to make the changes, how to make the adjustments that are going to be helpful, please reach out. You can email me at brian@brianhiteglobal.com. You can schedule a discovery call right from the website. I'd love to talk to you because I've been there. I truly have. It's a rough place to be. and if I can give you any information that's beneficial, I'd love to do that. So just please reach out.
There you go, guys. You got to reach out to Brian Hite, brianhiteglobal.com, and you can get all the information from him. He's here to help you guys. And I know me personally, there might be a time I need to get a hold of you. So be sure to look for that email if I ever need to get a hold of you, sir. But again, I appreciate you joining us here on Sweep Unplugged. And for everybody out there, go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV, hit that subscribe button where you can get this show as well as everything else, Sweep Unplugged, Sweep the League TV, and everything else we've got coming out for the Sweep the League Network and the Refocus Network. So for Brian Hite, this is Rudy Campos Jr. for Sweep Unplugged. Until we see you later, we'll talk to you later, knuckleheads.